6 p.m. here in Cairo. Welcome to Channel 2's latest news edition. Here are the main headlines. President Sisi delivers a speech in the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly. US President Donald Trump delivers a speech before the UN General Assembly. And Prime Minister Madbouli inspects several model industrial projects in Bani Suef Governorate. Welcome back. As a part of his participation in the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi delivered Egypt's speech on Tuesday. In his speech, President el-Sisi reviewed Egypt's stance on current issues on the international and regional arenas, as well as the Middle East crises and ways of solving them. The president also said that the UN General Assembly is being held amid many challenges facing the world that needs joint efforts to confront them. President el-Sisi reiterated that settling the ongoing crises is a precondition for creating a stable international system, pointing out bold decisions which are needed to give the Palestinians their rights back. El-Sisi also called for lifting the name of Sudan from the list of countries supporting terrorism and asserted that it is time to have a decisive stance to deal with the crises in Libya. The president also called on international funding institution to play the role in supporting development projects in the region and asserted that Egypt has been working for decades to boost ties with the Nile Basin countries. Egypt's participation in this year is of special importance in light of Egypt's presidency of the African Union. President el-Sisi is expected to review the African vision on the issues related to sustainable development and eradicating poverty, as well as other issues on the African Union agenda. In his speech before the United Nations General Assembly, US President Donald Trump on Tuesday urged to put an end to all challenges and divisions facing the world in the current period. During his speech, US President Donald Trump denounced Iran's activities and called on other nations to join the United States to pressure Iran after attacks on Saudi oil facilities, but said there is a path to peace. Trump called on nations around the globe to embrace the nationalism and reject globalism, saying that the wise leaders put their people and their countries first. He added that the future belongs to the sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbors, and honor the differences that make each country special and unique. Concerning immigration, Trump also said that the policies pushed by what he termed as open borders activists were hurting the very people they supposedly aim to help, as he called illegal immigration one of the world's most crucial challenges. Trump also put China on notice at the United Nations Tuesday, declaring the time of trade abuses by Beijing was over and calling on the country to protect Hong Kong's democratic ways of life. In his address before world leaders, Trump said that North Korea must denuclearize to realize its full promise. U.S. Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced the recent attacks on oil facilities in Saudi Arabia and announced his support for a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Speaking at the start of the annual general debate of the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, Guterres also emphasized economic inequality and climate change. World leaders have gathered at the UN to discuss global issues, and this year's theme is the debate of galvanizing unilateral efforts for poverty eradication, quality education, climate action, and inclusion.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi meets with world leaders.
أعبر لكم عن خالص الشكر والتقدير على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة.
Reaffirming Egypt's vision, delivering our voice abroad.
لتطوير التعاون الثنائي الاقتصادي والعسكري إلى مستويات غير مسبوقة.
Discussing regional and international developments. Solid and strong relations on the path of partnership and development.
On the sidelines of his participation in the United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met overnight with U.S. President Donald Trump. During the meeting, President el-Sisi reviewed with Trump Egypt's exerted efforts to achieve a Palestinian reconciliation, as well as a number of regional issues, and the top of which is the latest developments in Sudan, Yemen, Syria and Libya. President el-Sisi also stressed Egypt's keenness on boosting the partnership relations between the two countries. The talks also tackled the various aspects of the Egypt-US joint cooperation, particularly in economy and investment. On his part, President Trump stressed his administration's keenness on activating the aspects of bilateral cooperation's framework in various domains, and in light of the vital role played by Egypt in the Middle East as a cornerstone for security and stability in the whole region. On the sidelines of his participation in the United Nations General Assembly, President el-Sisi met overnight with the Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel. And during the meeting, President el-Sisi stressed Egypt's keenness to boost the bilateral relations with Belgium in various domains, especially in the economic, trade, cultural and tourism fields. President el-Sisi also held talks with the Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg, where they discussed the latest developments in a number of international and regional issues of mutual concern. The talks also tackled on means of enhancing ties in the field of trade, tourism, energy and logistics services. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi also asserted Egypt's keenness on developing economic and trade relations with the American companies and the business communities in a bid to support Egypt's economic development path. The president's remarks came during his participation in a number of business dinner held by overnight in the Business Council for the International Understanding on the sidelines of his participation in the UN General Assembly session. During the session, President el-Sisi also noted to the progress made in the economic and trade ties between Egypt and the United States over the past few years. Egypt's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli today visited Upper Egypt Governorate of Bani Suef and inspected the several model of the industrial projects, as well as the water treatment facilities, as well as the education and the technology centers. More details in this report narrated by Anji Maher.
Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli said the state has an interest in supporting the private sector, which is a primary partner in achieving development plans. His remarks came as he inspected an industrial complex of the Al Arabi Corporation at the industrial zone in Al Wasta, Bani Suef, as part of his visits to production and services projects in the Upper Egyptian Governorate. The complex houses 12 factories with £3.4 million of investments and provides 11,000 job opportunities. The Prime Minister also inspected a wastewater treatment facility in eastern Betsment village in the Bani Suef Governorate and said that the state is implementing water desalination projects in order to provide the best use of water resources. Madbouli hailed the high quality of the station that cost 96 million Egyptian pounds and serves 750,000 people. During his visit to Bani Suef, the Prime Minister also inspected the Martyr Captain Muhammad Assam Surur Preparatory School for Girls to welcome the start of the new school year. At the school, where 1,640 girls are enrolled, he watched a live lesson using a smartboard technology and followed a sports activity held by the students. The Prime Minister also inspected a technical high school at Bani Suef, where he hailed the quality training and vocational education provided for students to qualify them for work at wastewater treatment stations. He suggested a study to be drafted on the exemplary school to apply its model at every governorate across the nation. The Prime Minister also inspected the Technological Zone project in New Bani Suef City, which is implemented as part of efforts to expand science and technology zones across the nation. Science and technology zones aim to pull young talents and provide them a working environment that enables them to add value to the community. Accompanied with the Minister of Higher Education, Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, Madbouli also inspected the premises of the Technology University in Bani Suef, which has already begun its first school year with the Egyptian Korean Faculty for Technology.
The Interior Ministry said that 6 Brotherhood terrorists were killed on Tuesday in an exchange of fire with the police forces for a crackdown on the hideouts in the 6th of October city. The Ministry of Interior announced that the terrorists were planning to carry a series of attacks targeting churches and vital installations as well as army and police personnel during the coming period in a bid to make cause people with panic and make chaos in the country. Iran on Tuesday rejected what is called as a ridiculous allegations that it carried out this month an attack on a Saudi oil infrastructure after leaders of France, Germany and Britain have backed the US conclusions that Tehran was responsible. Earlier, President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said in a joint statement released by France after meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly that Iran carried out this month's attack on Saudi Arabian oil infrastructure and called on Tehran to choose dialogue over further provocations. US President Donald Trump said that he could not rule out a meeting with his Iranian counterpart Hassan Rouhani at the United Nations this week, but no encounter was yet scheduled. Speculations have been rife over whether the leaders of the two countries would meet on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, with France Emmanuel Macron trying to broker what would be a historic meeting. However, Trump responded to Macron's efforts by saying that they don't need a mediator. However, also, Tehran and Washington have been at loggerheads since last May of last year, when Trump abandoned a 2015 nuclear deal and began to impose sanctions on Iran. The United Kingdom's Supreme Court had ruled out on Tuesday that the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to shut down the Parliament in the run-up to Brexit was unlawful. Reacting to the decision that sparked calls for him to resign, Johnson said he respects the court's ruling but insisted that the UK would leave the EU on October 31st and that now is the time to get a good deal. European lawmakers, meanwhile, have hailed the British Supreme Court's decision as a victory for democracy. To prevent MPs from trying to hinder his strategy on August 28th, Johnson forced a suspension of Parliament in the second week of September until October the 14th. Welcome back to the business news. Egyptian stock markets continued a sliding downtrend, affecting by the sell-off of tendencies by the foreign investors. Benchmark EGX30 dipped 2.1%, settling at 13,465 points, while EGX30 cap dipped by 1.6%. Also, the two secondary indices, EGX70 for small and medium businesses and broader EGX100, receded by 1% and 1.1% respectively. The Finance Ministry today said it successfully drew the bids to purchase the treasury bills in the local currency that were offered for subscription by the central bank yesterday. The bills that will be due in 5 years or 10-year terms amount to a value of £2.5 billion. However, total bids reached £9 billion in an interest rate of less than 14.5%. A statement hailed the welcome reception of the initial subscription as beyond experts' expectations, saying they also received offers by the foreign investors to buy Egyptian bills with 10-year terms. Oil prices also dipped on expectations of a subdued demand, although uncertainty had remained about whether Saudi Arabia would be able to fully restore output after recent attacks on its oil facilities. Brent crude futures fell 40 cents to $64.37 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate futures were down 33 cents to $58.31. A senior market analyst said that the demand side of the equation is back on focus, pointing to sluggish manufacturing numbers in leading economies in Europe as well as in Japan.